Consider, dear viewer, the curious case of a chestnut-haired English vocalist who, in the spring of 1987, recorded a piece of mid-tempo pop music in a London studio. He was 21 years old. The session lasted, by most accounts, a single afternoon. The song reached #1 in 25 separate national markets, sold something in the order of 8 million copies. And then, as is the usual fate of such commercial confections, it began to fade from public consciousness, retreating gracefully into the demographic of supermarket radio. And there, in another universe, the matter would have ended. But ours is not that universe. Ours is a universe in which, 20 years after that London afternoon, the same 83-second introduction, the one with the synthesized brass stab and the unmistakable opening lyric, would become the single, most deployed practical joke in the recorded history of the internet. The artifact we examine today is not, strictly speaking, a song. It is a trap. Let us begin, as a matter of professional courtesy, with the song itself. It is titled, with brutal economy, Never Gonna Give You Up. It was written and produced by 3 British songwriters who, by the mid-1980 seconds, had developed what they themselves described as a kind of pop assembly line, a method of mass-producing chart hits with industrial reliability. Their chosen vocalist was a former church choir baritone from Lancashire who had spent his late teens working as a gravedigger and a roadie. His name was Richard Astley. To the recording industry, he was Rick. His voice was, and indeed remains, a source of mild and persistent astonishment. He is small in stature, pale in complexion, and gentle in demeanor. And yet from his throat there emerges a tone of such resonant chest-driven gravity that the listener instinctively glances behind him to identify the much larger man who must, surely, have actually sung the chorus. The accompanying music video was produced on a modest budget in late 1987. It opens upon a black and white tiled urban set, where Mr. Astley, attired in a long fawn-colored trench coat, performs a series of small, slightly self-conscious dance maneuvers in front of a bartender, a backup vocalist, and what appears to be an entirely uninvolved passerby. The choreography is, in a word, modest, and yet the modesty is, I would submit, precisely the point. For approximately 17 years following its release, the song existed in the ordinary half-life of late 1980 seconds pop. It was played at weddings. It featured in compilation albums. Mr. Astley himself retired from the music industry in 1993, at the age of 27, citing, with admirable candor, the fact that he had grown tired of being a pop star and would prefer, instead, to spend time with his young daughter. In that intervening period, the song retreated almost entirely from active cultural circulation. It became, in essence, the kind of artifact that one might recognize in the background of a chemist's shop but could not, if pressed, name the artist of. And it was during this period of relative obscurity that the song acquired a quality it could not have possessed at the height of its fame. It became unexpected. The mechanism of the joke was born, by most accounts, on a particular message board in the spring of 2007. The board in question was, at that period, the principal incubator of nearly all the prank-based humor that would shortly colonize the wider internet. The site had previously developed a related joke, in which a hyperlink purporting to lead to one prize would, upon being clicked, redirect the user to a video of the racing game Duck Hunt. That earlier joke, called with characteristic message board crudeness the Rickroll, supplied the structural template for what was about to follow. On the 15th of May of that year, a user posted, on that same board, a link that he claimed contained the first trailer for a long-awaited video game. Thousands clicked. The link did not, in point of fact, lead to the trailer. It led to the official music video for Never Gonna Give You Up, beginning as it always does, with the unmistakable opening synth stab and the silhouette of a young man in a fawn trench coat. The audience reaction, by all available accounts, was a mixture of indignation and grudging admiration. But the truly remarkable property of the joke was not the indignation. It was the fact that the joke could be redeployed by anybody, on anybody, in essentially any context, and remain entirely intact. Allow me, if you will, to dissect the joke in some detail. The Rickroll, as a comedic construction, depends upon 4 discrete conditions, each of which must be present simultaneously for the joke to function. First, the victim must anticipate, with at least moderate enthusiasm, the content that the hyperlink ostensibly promises. Second, the actual content must be entirely unrelated to that promise. Third, the actual content must be, in itself, ordinary, not shocking, not obscene, not in any way alarming. Fourth, and this is the masterstroke, the actual content must possess a quality of irreducible recognizability, such that the victim apprehends, within a fraction of a second, exactly what has been done to him. Note, please, the elegance of this construction. The joke is not violent, it is not crude. It does not require any cultural knowledge that the victim is unlikely to possess. It requires only that the victim be capable of recognizing within the first 2 seconds a piece of pop music that he has, almost certainly, heard hundreds of times in his life without ever consciously cataloging. The joke, in other words, weaponizes the listener's own latent familiarity against him. It does not deliver anything new. It delivers, instead, something so deeply embedded in the listener's cultural memory that he had ceased to be consciously aware of it, and then forces him to encounter it, suddenly, where he was expecting something else. By the spring of 2008, the joke had escaped the message board. It had migrated in particular to a video-sharing platform of considerable size, where it had begun to be deployed at scale by individuals who had never visited the source board, and who often did not know the song's title, its artist, or its decade of origin. On the 1st of April of that year, a date of particular significance in the chronology of practical jokes, the platform itself participated in the gag. Every single featured video on the front page of the site that day redirected upon being clicked to the same music video. By the year's end, an estimated 18 million individuals had been rickrolled. By 2009, the practice had been honored by a presidential candidate, 2 professional sports leagues, several universities at graduation ceremonies, and, in a moment of high absurdity, by a parade balloon at a major American department store's annual procession, in which Mr. Astley himself emerged, fully alive, from a float and lip-synced the chorus to a crowd of bewildered spectators. Most internet jokes possess a half-life measurable in months. The Rickroll has now persisted for very nearly 2 decades. This is, by an order of magnitude, an outlier. The question one must ask is, why? My own view, and I offer it with no claim to definitive authority, is that the Rickroll has survived for the same reason that certain plays of Shakespeare have survived. It contains no topical reference. It depends upon no specific cultural context. It can be performed in any language, on any device, in any decade. And the structural beat of the joke, the anticipation, the substitution, the recognition, remains entirely unchanged. In 2020, the original music video crossed 1 billion views on its host platform. In 2022, it crossed 2 billion. To Mr. Astley's credit, he has accepted his second career with a remarkable grace. He has performed the song at Glastonbury. He has performed it at Coachella. He has on several occasions rickrolled audiences himself, emerging without warning at the climax of other performers' sets to deliver the opening chord. He is, perhaps, the only pop star in living memory whose primary commercial value derives not from the popularity of his music, but from the structural absurdity of its deployment. There is, I think, a lesson buried in this saga. Most cultural artifacts age by becoming less relevant. A small minority of artifacts age by becoming more relevant. As the original context fades, the artifact assumes a kind of weightlessness that allows it to be deployed in contexts the original creators could never have imagined. Never Gonna Give You Up is now precisely such an artifact. It is no longer, in any meaningful sense, a love song. It is a punchline. It is also, by some accident of cultural physics, a punchline that has outlasted nearly every other cultural product of its decade. One cannot help but suspect that in the year 2147, when our descendants are debating whether to send a final transmission into the dark of space, the link will, with some quiet inevitability, lead to the same 83-second video, and someone in a fawn trench coat will be there to greet whoever opens it.